Welcome back to another U2 Concast. We've got two special guests with us, Sherry Lawrence from the U2 Con staff, and nearly staff, but honorary member Matt Nathanson, a good friend of the fan community and of the conference staff. It's great to have you back, Matt. You were with us about a year ago for our conference, and you've both been to the show. You've seen it with your own eyes, and in fact, you both were in the same room for the same San Francisco show. Uh, how was it? Matt, I know you're coming from the place, right, of being a performer yourself. So maybe how did it hit you? What'd you think about it?
So I had moments of it's funny, I've become not critical of U2 and Bono and being a super nerdy fan. I find that I put them to sort of like an unrealistic expectation of how things should go. And so the book and the performance for me have sort of the same thing that like later era shows might have, where there's like moments of complete transcendence where I lose myself completely and my thought process just kind of disappears, and I end up just kind of like being, let me turn this fan off. I end up being swept up in the moment, and I forget my judgy sort of petty self. And then there are other moments where I'm very petty and very present and very sort of picking apart the things that I think are kind of cringy. Like, but what's amazing about Bono, I had a really sort of I've been thinking about art lately, and I've been thinking about vulnerability, and I've been thinking about entertainment versus art. And then U2 has always done this great thing of like kind of straddling that line where that they are satisfying themselves first, and then at the same time they're paying attention to what they're doing and what they're projecting out. And so for me it was like coming in and out of like a station I was tuning in. Like at first it started, and let me sort of preface this by saying I really hate Broadway. Like I hate I hate that. So
You made that clear in your show
oh my God, it's
when we
crazy.
saw it.
I know it's such a dicky shitty, but it's like, but like, so it starts in a way that's very
Sorry, you got to tell us one more line. Why? Why do you hate Broadway that much? What is
just
it about Broadway?
for some reason it feels really it feels kind of canned to me, like in a
Mm,
way that
yeah.
it feels kind of schlocky, like not in a way that
The whole production of it. You mean
yeah,
just
like, so again, it's a similar thing where sometimes I can really disappear into
mm,
it. My kid is really into it, and so, as Sherry knows, and so like as I've said, and so I've started to go a lot more and go to musicals, and I'm just like, at first I'm like, get me out of here, and then I end up being kind of swept up. And it was a similar thing with U2. And it's funny, if I think back to the first Zoo TV show I saw in March of '92, right? Like in Boston. Maybe the first one was Worcester. 2 nights later was the Garden. And I saw those shows. And I remember being so devastated at the first time I saw Zoo TV. I remember thinking, like, where's my band? Like, where in Worcester, watching Bono come out as the Fly in this sort of like outfit and kind of this shtick. And I was like, where's my guy? Like
And it was also a birthday show. There was a Playboy bunny involved and a
oh,
feathered boa.
that was
So
that
that
was
was a weird
was
show to be
the,
at.
it was that the Garden one was Adam's birthday, but
The Worcester Centrum was on Adam's birthday. The Garden was on St. Patrick's Day, and they started the show off with bagpipers.
yeah, oh my God, yes, totally. So, but I remember being kind of like, I had tickets through propaganda for like 7 or 8 or 9 shows, and I remember turning to my then girlfriend, now wife, and saying like, we should sell our tickets. And then there was a moment, maybe like a third of the way through, where like I sort of, it's funny that the book is called Surrender, and it's funny that Bono's whole thing is surrender. And I sort of like gave in to this thing. And then then at the Garden, I was like euphoric. Like and
yeah.
it's funny, like I wonder if I saw this again, if I'd be able to kind of settle into it. It just started with this sort of like, you know how Bono does the shtick, like he comes out and he's like ba 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 do 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 da, and he's like, I'm the guy, and like for me, that guy is like less fun than the guy that's like, and there were moments of transcendence in the performance where it was like, oh yeah, this isn't shtick, this is like, there it is, like, and it was funny. I contrasted it against the Dave Chappelle SNL monologue that everybody is upset about, and I was thinking about risks, and I was thinking about, you know, and being a Jewish person and watching this thing and just thinking it was really funny and thinking it was incredibly risky, and it was incredibly like, I get why people would be upset by it, but I was just sort of bowled over by the sort of fearlessness in it. And some people would say it wasn't fearlessness, it was fear. Like everybody's got to read, but it was like after seeing Bono and then seeing Chappelle, I was like, it was this wild thing about, as artists, what is vulnerable. And he was incredibly vulnerable about certain parts of his dad, but at the same time, it was very broad strokey, and it, you know, he's so smart and he's so funny and he's so kind of like he's so much more electric than he allows himself to be in public situations. Like you get it from the book when you read bits about his youth, and you know, getting he's just so much more human than he allows himself to be. And I know this is sort of a longer story, but I think that where U2's more recent stuff doesn't connect for me is that there's an element of like, it's like he's telling, he's not searching, he's very confidently being this caricature that he's become. And it started as this punky thing, then it became this sort of theater punk thing. Now it's just very much a character that he sort of shows to us. And it's like, and there are moments like Sherry said where you just like there are moments in the show that get nuanced and cool. There are moments, if you're a nerd for Bono like we are, and for U2, that you notice things like when you watch interviews or whatever, you're like, oh fuck, he was being very, that moved me, like my hair on the back of my neck stood up. And so, but whereas like Dave Chappelle lives in that place, and comedians live in those places much differently than singers, but like for me, it's with U2 in the later part of their career, it's always been this sort of strange back and forth. Like he told us he was being vulnerable, so I feel like everyone was response was like, he's being vulnerable, and like I don't want to play that game. I want to feel the vulnerability. I don't want to be kind of shown like, look at how vulnerable I'm being, and then everybody in the audience says, you're so vulnerable. It's like, I want him to be fucking vulnerable. And there were moments of it in the book, there's moments of it on stage where you're like, that's a person I connect to, like not somebody that I idolize, but somebody like, oh my God, yes, like your dad, you know, the way he would describe what his dad did or these kind of things. It was like, to me, and the way he would, like that Adam and Larry bailed on Pavarotti, it was like, yeah, this is the shit. Like, or the making of I Will Follow, where he takes the guitar from Edge and he's mad and he's sort of doing this, no, like this, you idiot, you know, and then Edge is like, well, like this. And then all of a sudden, that was the most moving moment in the whole thing, when he would focus, when they focused on I Will Follow, in this eruption of, and Jackknife did the song, came in, and it was like really beautiful. So anyway, I've got a, like all sort of later era U2 stuff for me, it was, had moments of like where I lost myself and moments where I was very present and very aware of what was going on. Like on top of the table, you know, like cutting into his heart and doing his arm movements, and then talking about like, and again, because like having your fucking, something he didn't talk about at all, and then something he talks about, it's funny how he approached it with this sort of like this shticky sort of like, but like, and my heart, and it's like making the connection between like my heart was being opened up, and it's just like, dude, you're so much smarter than this, like you're so much deeper than this, like why are you doing this to me? Like you know what I mean, like, and not just me, but like, why are you doing this to us? Like you're old enough and you're rich enough to not pander to us, like fucking give it to us straight, like give it to us in a way that you don't entertain us, but you fucking cut us to like the, like enough of the Springsteen thing. Like I want I want real, if you're going to cut into this thing, cut into it and show me something that makes you look like a vulnerable fucking prick or a scared, terrified child, but he would tell you, I'm a scared, terrified child, I'm a prick, but I want to see it. Like I want to feel it like on a visceral level. So anyway, but I of course overanalyze everything, and especially with you too.
I mean, that's interesting. Like, it seems like you're saying that because, like I think all three of us, like you're saying, no, tell me the real thing, because you believe, there's something actually, there's something there that could happen without shtick. Like, you're so aware of it. Like, you believe, he's got something else to give you, and he's not giving it to you.
Like for me, when art is effective, it's effective because it's incredibly honest and incredibly cringy in a different way than Bono is cringy sometimes. Like the Fly character, like that didn't move me necessarily. What moved me was the song The Fly. Like when I heard it on Achtung Baby the night I got the record and listened to it, I was like, fucking A, this song. When I heard it before that on the single, as the single with Alex Descends into Hell, I remember putting it on and being like, if this is my band, I'm so fucking in. And I remember listening and being like, this is the most transcendent move from Rattle and Hum to this. And then I saw the show, they open with Zoo TV, then they do The Fly, and I remember being so bummed. And it's funny that like this moment that on record like still destroys me. I think The Fly is such an exceptional song, and then to see it live in Worcester and have it be so far away from the feeling I had, it was like watching somebody pretend to do a thing. And I get why he did it or whatever, but like I think I'm just looking for more honest, like less presentation and a little bit more blood.
Did you see the same thing, Sherry? You were in that same space. Did you feel like, yeah, this is here's the shtick, and then here's the real thing?
Well, I kind of felt like he needed to come out in his utter Bono-ness, because that's what he's been doing for 45 years. That's what a good chunk of the audience came to see. I mean, that's the moves. I mean, I had somebody go to me, oh my God, Spider Bono's back. Look at how he's moving. Look at how he's, playing with the mic stand, the Bono I love is back. And it's like, but that's all shtick, just like what Matt said. But what I saw, and Matt touched upon a little bit, is that character development. He came out in the way that we all expected him to come out. And over the course of those 1 hour and 52 minutes, you saw him ease into himself. You saw him sort of, break down that character or caricature of himself, that by the middle of the show, I felt that all of the stage antics that he was doing kind of faded, and it just became a conversation. It became, you're now in my living room and I'm telling you what's going on, or you're now at the pub with me and I'm explaining to you what's going on. This isn't a show to make you really think too much. It's his life story. And he's been so protective of his privacy, in as much as, he's the most loquacious of the band. He's the one who gives the most amount of interviews, but he's also the one that gives the most amount of sound bites. And you never really get, the real heart of what's going on. And only if he feels comfortable with you will he open up. And, the whole thing with the heart surgery, he wouldn't even open up to Jan Wenner about that when Songs of Experience first came out and he did the Rolling Stone interview. He wouldn't even name it. It was off limits to even talk about. So to lead the book with it and to almost lead the show with it, it's both, literal and figurative. But sometimes you got to hit somebody over the head in order for them to finally get it. Many people need that. Matt and I obviously don't, but that's how he feels that he needs to present it, as a catharsis. Maybe he needs to be hit up over the head with it. He always says that, he wants to let the song sing him, and that, sometimes the song is what he needs to hear. Well, maybe this is the show he needs to see.
Do you get the sense that Bono needs to go out and do a book tour this way for Bono? Or who's the show designed for?
So I had a pretty cynical view of it when it started. I was like, oh yeah, he's trying to out Springsteen. Yeah. Like he got bummed that Springsteen got all the attention for the Broadway thing and he's doing his version of it.
And now that he can't play guitar, he has to play the table.
Right. Well, and it's like, yeah. And it's like, but and that was what it felt like, was like, anybody that says I'm looking to be the biggest band in the world, to me, it's a similar Achilles heel of saying like I'm the boss. Like my name's boss, like is where everybody calls them boss. It's like he wants to one up the game of like Springsteen did a Broadway thing, and he and Springsteen have always had, that was always the most awkward thing for me on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame Madison Square Garden show, is watching U2 and Mick Jagger interact, which was very uncomfortable. And then watching Springsteen and U2 interact. And the fact that U2 were the house band for these other people was, in my opinion, was sort of put them at a disadvantage, which he doesn't like to be put at, because who the fuck does? And if you think you're in the biggest band in the world and you want that title, the last thing you want to be is a backing band for two other of the bigger artists in the room. And then it's like, and I remember watching the Mick Jagger and watching the Springsteen and being like, this motherfucker looks so uncomfortable. And then when I got in the room, I didn't know what to expect. I didn't do any research. So I didn't know if he was going to sit and have somebody talk to him about the book. Then all of a sudden it started and I was like, oh God, he's going after the Springsteen thing. But it's different, but it's the same. And watching people in the audience, I think this is the other thing about being an artist that gets older. The scary thing, and he's said it many times, is like, young people could give a shit about Bono. And so like they could give a shit about you too. They could give a shit about any of it. And it's what makes the youth so amazing. And for us, and I say us like he and I don't mean it like that, but us being people who perform, who make a living doing this, like that's terrifying, because as you're getting older, your audience is getting older, and what is important to them gets less important. And the kids is where the passion is and where they'll pass things around.
But on the flip side, the older people can afford what you want to charge.
Yeah, totally. But that was my point, is like, I thought the audience at this show was like super fucking fanatical U2, like diehard, like the people that I was bumping into, like outside or in the bathroom, or it was like, or somebody turned in front of me. Like, and I said to my wife, I was like, I wonder if Joe O'Hurley is going to be doing sound. And I said, I wonder. And then I heard this person in front of me go, that's Joe O'Hurley up there. And I was like, oh my God. I turned
Joe and Bruce and Willie and Smasher, all
of them. And I said to my wife,
they're all there.
I was like, we are surrounded by nerds, like in the best way. People who have been loving this fucking guy for a long time. And that's kind of dope. Like in that way, he was super serving his people, although it was incredibly difficult to get a ticket and whatever. But he still, like, that's what everybody in that room wanted. Like they wanted what he gave them. And on a certain level, I love that. And on a certain level, at this age, at this part in my life, what Dave Chappelle did in front of SNL was so much more like challenging and enjoyable and like scary and that to me is so much more compelling. It's funny that he's doing this at this stage in his game, as being in the biggest band in the world, or one of the biggest bands in the world, I'm sure, but like, and then coming and doing like a one-man 4-act performance with like in a certain way, there's a like in and of itself, it's a risky kind of rad maneuver. I think I just wished, if you're going to do it, like really cut as deeply as you can. Bono wants so badly to control the narrative of the band. And it's like, maybe he did that in 1985 and 2003. I don't know, but I fell for it, but I don't want to fall for it anymore.
But do you think though that he should control his own narrative if it's a story about his own life?
Can I just grab that word?
Yeah.
For the next hour, can we just talk about that contradiction of trying to control a surrender story?
Oh my God, that's great. Well done.
It's all about duality now, isn't it?
Right.
That's his whole theme right now, is living within the duality and accepting duality.
But it just feels like when he just feels kind of grandparenty to me in that way, where it's like he's coming down and telling us about his experience, and he's telling us how to feel about his experience.
Ever since he was in Sing 2, he's turned into the great grandpa.
Oh, well, don't even get me started on Sing 2. And the other part, and then one more thing, it's like, he's on stage and he's like, I've always been a top line, looking for the top line.
Oh, wait a minute. Sorry. drinking game. Every
Yeah,
time
yeah.
he says top line, I have to take
So,
a drink.
and because top line is such a 2000 like 2022 way of songwriters thinking about songs, and like you have a top line person, and like when he went and wrote with other people on the last record, but like not to be a dick, but like Bono has never been known for his melodic sense. Like he's not fucking Burt Bacharach. Like Burt Bacharach is a top line guy. Like, do you know what I mean? Elton John is a top line guy. Bono is a fucking punk badass, like barely talented genius, right? And that's what makes him great. But here he is selling you on this thing of like, well, I've always been a top line guy. It's like, no, you haven't. Shut up. Like, stop trying to recreate yourself in some sort of like, don't, everybody does that. Don't do that. Don't be average. Like,
He's a salesman, right? But like the time, like he has to sell the fact that he's also this deep feeler.
yeah, he's a grifter. Like he said, he's this grifter in a weird
And like
way.
yeah, like I don't know how much of it is really intellectual, right? Those moments that we remember and we love, they came from a place of just emoting feelings, you know, and like those are the highlights of his career. So this is getting into something I was gonna maybe ask Matt specifically, because like as a set list or as you construct a show or as you construct a memoir, you know, like we're talking now, really deep in the weeds of like all these things that could have been there, and we know, like we know his story, we know the songs available. But Matt, when you put it, like, can you talk about making a show, constructing the show?
Yeah.
When you want to tell a story, can you kind of see what Bono's trying to do at the same time? But like, you know, your fans show up and they want something and you want something, and how do you make that happen so that you're happy and they're happy?
I didn't pay much attention to the way that he structured the songs, but for me as an artist, set lists are a really big bummer a lot of the time because there's really certain songs that don't fit, and if you put them in, you can. And I'm a people pleaser, and so there's so much in me that wants. I don't want anybody to have a bad time, which is like the antithesis of making something good. And so I often just sort of insert. I won't insert songs that I want to play. I'll play songs I'm sort of over because they fit. Maybe they do a thing that really is a nice transitional moment. Uh, um, I've never gotten bummed about having to play the songs of mine that are the most well known. But maybe there's one or two that I might kind of skip. But it's set lists are a weird thing, and so I didn't think about that from Bono's perspective either, that he's got to serve people that have come to see a certain thing. You know, when he was on Colbert and did With or Without You, like a bunch of people sent it to me and they were like, this is amazing, right? And I watched it, and like With or Without You, as a super U2 fan, it's always like, it's not the best foot to lead with when they're like, people are like, what's your favorite song? Like you want to say Promenade or Elvis Presley in America, something weird, because those are amazing songs. It's like With or Without You is probably the greatest thing that's ever happened to me, like from a recorded works standpoint. Like it's just perfect. And it's perfect in a way that's like hard to describe, and it hits me every time. And I watched this version of him do it, and this might be blasphemous, but like the nebulous, how he says like, I wish I could rewrite some of the lyrics on Josh Tree because they were so obtuse, so like he'll say like, I wish I could go back and finish those songs or whatever. It's like he was doing With or Without You, and it's like, see the stone set in your eyes, am I the thorn twist in your side? And I was like, no, man, like what the fuck are you doing? Like, stop.
But he did that with Streets. He did that with
No,
Sunday
he did it
Bloody
with
Sunday.
every song. That's what I'm saying. He did
Yeah.
it with every
Yeah, and that's
fucking
what we're
song.
going to get with songs of surrender, unfortunately, because he said that he felt that those lyrics were unfinished and he feels that he's now finished them.
Yeah.
So
and
I agree with you with the blasphemy, because for 30 years this is how we've been singing it.
but not only that, it's like that you have to, yeah, but it was like there's a chemical thing that occurs, and it doesn't mean that he has to stick. All people after 30 years of making songs want to sort of like re-inhabit them so they can find their way in. But as a listener, like their chemistry experiment, it doesn't mean that he has to be a slave to it, but like it's like he took all the, it's like when you do the thing that he did with or Without You, it's happened before where he reimagined Running to Stand Still on Zoo TV, and it was like the greatest thing I've ever seen. Like there's been reinterpretations of things and it's really worked. And the With or Without You from this is like an example where I don't think it really works. Like instead of floating through it and being like, wow, yeah, it's like all of a sudden he's just kind of yanking you down to earth and like showing you, sticking your face in the story and being like, this is what the line is. And it's like, my man, like I don't want this to happen to me. Like, and so like, I want to continue to sort of float in your not knowing. I don't want to be like locked into your knowing.
It's like there's this transcendence that you've been at. I mean, or the thing gets you. It's worked every time before. It gives you this lift off, and you can't get lift off anymore.
Well, and sometimes, like for example, Running to Stand Still on Zugivi, like there have been moments for them, but I think that they are slightly disengaged from those moments. Is my point. I feel like as a band, they are not at their most feely, sort of like dialed. If I hear Bono talk about like, I'm going to make a rock record that changes the world, it's like, this kind of shtick is so old. It's like, man, just fucking bleed for me. His version of With or Without You, which maybe if he had done it, there's so the version in Boston of With or Without You, where he's, that they filmed when his dad was dying and he's lying on his back and he brings that woman up. I mean, that's like one of the greatest like reimagining of that song. And it is a reimagining. He changes the arc of it, he changes the shape of it, and then it's one of the most it's like one of the greatest things in the world. Like you watch it and you're like, you get it differently than you got it in 1987, or differently than you get. It's like all of a sudden I'm watching it and I'm like, oh my God, this song is different now. And but not because he's trying to make it, not because he's like, I'm going to make this different. It just became different because he was feeling things in that moment, and I don't, that transcended him and transcended speaking, and like, and in this story, the stories of surrender, I feel like he's saying, I'm going to reinterpret. It's like it's all brain. It's like I'm going to.
And what's also interesting is in his chat with Brene Brown in Austin last week. Part one of the podcast just went online on BreneBrown.com. But she's talking about how when the War album came out, that there was space in the songs that you could inhabit, that it didn't have answers. It did the music didn't give you answers, but there was space for you to embrace what you needed to embrace, and that the songs could take on its own life based on whoever was listening to it. And Bono riffed on that a little bit about how that is one of his goals, I guess, that as they got along with their songwriting, you want to have that type of space. And now that you say that, within the show, there isn't a lot of space for you to interpret things outside of what he's trying to tell you. There's certainly, in anything that Bono writes or does, you've got the holy trinity of God, love, and politics. Those are your holy trinity. And at some point, there's going to be an intersection, and there were certainly intersections throughout the show. And I know that others will probably jump on that opportunity to do another concast about that. But there really wasn't a lot of space for you to walk out thinking anything other than
what he wants.
Wow.
Yeah.
It starts off as, I was just a baritone, and at the end, now I'm a tenor, da da da.
Yeah.
And the path that it took him to get there over those 62 years. I also think that the show, by the end of the show, in the Stories of Surrender tour, he is humanized. I think people who held him at a certain level realize this is, even though he's very rich, he still has to put on underwear if he chooses to, just like us.
Yeah.
He doesn't like minty toothpaste, but he still has to brush his teeth just like us. That, every family has their crises. Every family has secrets. Every family has something else. And he is no less of a human and no more of a human. He's just had a lot more opportunities and made a lot of money along the way. But at the end of the show, you actually felt that humanity, that, this is a man who's lived a life.
Yeah.
Very nice life, by the way, but still.
No, I think it's great. I mean, like, dude, it's like I felt like that throughout the performance, where I was like moments of like, oh, there's something that I'm just looking to be moved on this. It would be nice if we could focus the beam and get something where we were like, because they have it in them. They're like, they're one of the best bands we've ever had, because there's so little, like I always say, there's so little actual genius talent in there. It's really just four very determined human beings. Like, it's not Led Zeppelin. It's not you know what I mean? They're not taking this mastery of what they've done. The Edge is pretty masterful, but that's after 30 years of doing this thing. But like, you know, he's pretty limited character. These are these limited human characters that come together and do extraordinary things in this way. That's like, they're not Joni Mitchell. They're not Bob Dylan. They're not, like, they feel very working class in that way. And so I always root for them in that way, where it's like, you guys can do this. Like, you got this, like, just figure it out. You figured it out this far. It's like, you know, and that's,
Yeah, I love that we're cheering them on to do what we believe that they can do, like as if they need it. But like,
yeah, no, exactly.
I think they need a pep talk.
Yeah.
Somebody to just boost their confidence, to just do what you know you can do well.
It's crazy.
Quit trying so hard, but yeah.
Yeah, but we all do it in our own, you know, it's how,
sure.
how the answer is usually not trying.
All right.
So anyway, this was awesome. Thanks you.
Thanks so much.
Gary, it was great to see you. And Scott, it was rad. Thanks for
Yep.